Hello and welcome. I'm delighted to introduce you to my leader tonight. My leader guest is Sandra Vargas. Sandy, as everyone calls her, is the president and the CEO of the Minneapolis Foundation, which is the oldest foundation in Minnesota. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's a great pleasure to be here with you tonight.
Well, you fit the description of leader at so many levels, and I'd love to start out with you and talk a bit about your early days, because I bet as a little girl you did not expect to be an executive at this level.
Well,
Tell us a bit about your start in life.
Thank you. Well, I think I had an interesting start, but it didn't seem that interesting when I was young. I don't know how much you know about me, but for people who do know me, they know that I am from a Latino family. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, my family has been in Minnesota since 1924, and my maternal grandparents came up through the migrant stream, settled out after a year in the fields, and said, the fields are not a life that we want for our family. Mm-hmm. And so my grandparents, with my mother as a baby, settled out in Minneapolis. And so being Hispanic, being Catholic, we have many relatives in this area. And so that's something that people have to watch for, because whenever I'm introduced to another Latino, I have to make sure they're not a relative.
Might or maybe be a cousin.
It could be a cousin. I have many cousins.
And you have 7 siblings.
I do.
And you were the oldest.
And that is a special place in the family, I think. When you think about leadership, although it's not a conscious word in your mind, for the most part, when you've got many siblings and you're the oldest, you're put in charge. Mm-hmm. So in fact, my leadership training came up very early when I was the oldest of 8 children. Now, to be fair, my mom and dad had like 2 families. They had 3 of us together, a couple of years apart, and then there was an 8-year span, and then the other 5 showed up. And so I was 12 by the time that next generation started to be born, and I used to carry my brother Ron around with me.
And he was the first of the second group?
That's correct. That's correct.
You were 12 years older than Ron, and then quite a few years older
21 years older than my youngest brother.
Youngest sibling.
So, and as a matter of fact, my mother, I'm sure if she saw this, she'd be mortified, but my mother was 45 years old and about 8 months pregnant when she went to my brother Don's graduation. Of course, it was a mortifying experience for her, but my family is very important to me and a very big influence in my life.
You also wrote in some of the papers I received about your grandmother and what a important person she was too. And this is your mother's mother?
This is my mother's mother, and mi abuelita, as I used to call her, was so near and dear to my heart, and still is. I can still feel her spirit close to me, and it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. The women in my family, and it's not to say the men didn't play a great role, because they did, but I have to say, for the stereotype of Hispanic women, I think that the women in my family and the women in other Latino families really break out of that stereotype. My mother, my grandmother were just absolutely so active and so directive in so many ways in the family. And as a matter of fact, as we think about leadership, one of the things that my grandmother said to me, not in these words, but she conveyed this message. She said, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and take care of your community. And so, in fact, my life has been guided by those words from my grandmother. And she was 91 years old when she died, and I still miss her to this day.
How about your parents, Sandy? Are they still alive to see you at this interesting job?
My mother is still alive. My dad had serious angina, and so really took care of himself, though, and lived through a very serious heart attack at the age of 65, lived to be 80, and then died 7 years ago. And then you worry about your mother, as we all do, and so I was very worried about her, but She has really adapted, and I think the adaptation has to do with feeling needed by her family members. And so she just told me the other day on the phone, she said, you know, when I'm no longer useful, I'm just going to lay down and hopefully God will take me. And so that's something that she has on her mind. I said, Mom, you're going to be around for a very long time.
She's needed by this large
that's
family.
Right, that's right.
I want to fast forward and then we'll come back. When you talk about the influence of women, you told an interesting story about your 5-year-old niece who came out to Harvard. Sandy went to the John Kennedy School of Government, got her master's in your late 40s.
That's absolutely right.
And your little niece came out, and just tell the story.
It is so wonderful. You never know what kind of influence you're going to have on young people. I have 2 younger sisters, and my one sister with her husband and her 3 children, actually I think it was 3 at that time, her oldest daughter Sierra came with her to visit me as I graduated from Harvard. And that experience stayed with her such a long time, but right as soon as she got back to Texas, they do live in South Texas, she told her teacher that she went to Harvard. And her teacher...
A kindergarten student,
That's exactly right,
right?
at 5 years old. And I can tell you that that experience has never left her. I am happy to say at 16 years old, she is excellent in science and math, plays the cello, has a job, and looks at MIT as the logical school that she's going to.
It's such a message in a way that we don't know what influence we might have.
That's absolutely.
And what a wonderful thing for your nieces and nephews to see you achieve the way you have. One of the things you said, Sandy, is that you think interpersonal relationships are so key to success. And I thought, I want to have you speak about that, and then also some of the other ingredients that you think have made a difference in terms of your own success.
Let me just start.
General.
Thank you. I think that relationships are absolutely the oil that makes the world go round. And especially if you are thinking about a leadership role or wherever you find yourself, you can never underestimate the kinds of relationships and the connections that you have with other people. Because you never know when you are going to need some help or a sounding board when you're thinking about your career or your personal life or your family, when those other individuals might be the right individual to talk to. And I can tell you, as I've thought about my career, and I got started with the credentialing a little bit later in my life and went to St. Catherine's Weekend College as a mature adult, but I have to tell you, I enjoyed every minute of that because it was so relevant. It wasn't something off in the Milky Way. It was something that I could take back to work, and I worked at the Department of Transportation then, and take back to work and start applying. As a matter of fact, the staff would say, oh my gosh, she's studying marketing. Okay, we're gonna be going on this project now. So
they learned along with
they did.
you.
It was great fun. But I think that relationships are something that we shouldn't underestimate, and that we should always try to connect with people authentically and see how we can interact, but also help others, and that'll come back to help us at the same time.